This morning, I'm doing a paste-up of a full-page ad. Advertising is very important to a newspaper because it provides most of the profits. In fact, the price you pay barely covers the cost of delivering the paper.
They follow the... Will we play or play?
Bring an extra cigar down.
No, I didn't.
At 10:30 we have this editorial board meeting at which we decide what positions we're going to take on which issues in that day's paper.
Able to go in on these scenic corridors. The board chairman tried to get that changed so that the scenic corridors would be exempt, and they kicked that down 3-2.
We thought we should have an editorial tomorrow, if we possibly can, about the announcements. It's going to be difficult, but we think we can manage it.
We can get something in type that will cover us at least through, say, the first edition.
The editor presumably is responsible for the content of the newspaper and its components, magazines, etc., except for the advertising. What an editor does really is exercise overall direction. But without competent editors in charge of each area, there's no way in the world that he can do a good job.
Since the Democrats do have the majority, of course, they have the power, if they so wish, to really carry through on this.
I'd like to get Conrad to do something also.
I think yeah. You notice he came on very fast last night with
the
the Johnson thing.
Yeah.
Fastest horse he ever drew.
Conrad is a vastly talented cartoonist who is immensely skilled in making a very strong, clear point.
I draw because I cannot write. Drawing is about 5% of what I do. The idea itself, I add idea up to amount to something that has never worked.
The Times has a complete kitchen where recipes are tested for articles in our food section.
My background is home economics. Of course, we also do other things that include nutrition and things of that sort and try to know what's new in the food business and in the food industry. I like food. I have for many, many years. You can tell that.
Erwin Baker, please. This morning, my assignment is to cover the mayor's press conference at City Hall, which, as it happens, is just across the street.
Joe.
Good morning, Mayor.
Hi.
Of course, the big news today is the finalizing of the terms of the agreement, but it takes...
The mayor generally dictates what's to be discussed at a news conference, or at least for most of it, and then there's generally a chance to ask questions.
I've certainly tried to change it.
I have only one question to ask this morning. Why, 19 days after he promised it, the mayor still hasn't released a record of how often he has been out of town since the last election?
Mayor, 19 days ago you said at your announcement that you would ask one of your aides to provide a list of your time outside Los Angeles since 1969.
Oh, I'm not going way back to 1969, but I don't have to bother with that anymore because Mr. Baker, the Los Angeles Times, supplied the figures.
That was only for the last 6 months. Are you now going back on that agreement to provide such a list?
No, I'm not going back on the agreement. I don't know whether they've got them together now, but I can tell you, the record is a lot better than it's been made to look. And I would go any place in this world to help the United States of America and to help our city.
Well, your
I
press
still intend
secretary
to do that.
said this morning that the mayor is acutely aware of the request, and as soon as we have it pulled together and verified, we'll release it.
Well, I don't think it's a big issue in the campaign, but I'm glad Mr. Baker of the Times has been keeping track.
Ready?
Shoot. That's it?
Jim? John Dryden.
The Times has a number of writers who specialize in specific fields. My specialty is the environment. I'll spend this afternoon at the University of California at Riverside.
The charcoal has a greater affinity. The gas is more apt, the hydrocarbons, to sit on the adsorbent and stick under high pressure. So you get a more efficient absorption. Basically, this gives us air, which we've tested recently, by the way, which is quite a bit cleaner than Antarctica. We had samples of air from Antarctica analyzed here in our laboratory, and they're really fairly dirty.
Jim, this is the actual chamber that is pumped out the way you were describing from outside.
Right. This is the evacuable chamber.
The public is interested in things that they don't already know and understand. They're looking for solutions to problems. They're looking for a comprehension of the world around them.
On the walls.
So what you're saying is that for the first time, you will be able to simulate any atmosphere that you want to.
Yes.
This piece of equipment is a long path-length infrared spectrophotometer.
Of course, I have to consider what the subject does, and then, in a case like this, where it's a fairly technical subject, I have to try and accurately depict it in language which is understandable to people who are not scientifically inclined.
In such a way that the light emerges as a beam about 4.5 feet in diameter.
I'll gather data on the smog chamber today and write the story tomorrow. It will appear in a weekend edition of the Times.
At this point, I tell the editor on the Metropolitan desk what type of story I'll have on the mayor's press conference.
He goes back on his pledge of 19 days ago to release the list of his foreign travels and out-of-town travels. He says that he can't find it in effect. I haven't gone through the tapes yet, but I think that the tapes will generally support that. We have found it in the city council president's office. And in the first 126 days of his term, he'd been out of town 49 days, of which 39 of these were spent abroad. And Irwin's getting everything. Irwin's got all the figures.
The story must be ready no later than 6:30. But before writing it, I need to get a few facts from Irwin Baker. Irwin is the Times City Hall reporter. He has an office right there at City Hall.
However, they say that much of this was that many of these non-weekend days, which Gibson lists, were actually holidays. Now, I'd like to go over to Gibson's office and check to see whether that, in fact, is true. They do exclude holidays?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Let's check that just for sure. All right. Friday, December 24th to Sunday, January 2nd. So Christmas on that day would have been a Saturday, which would have also been a weekend, and so would New Year's, huh?
I guess, but just a second. Diane, could you give me a hand?
Would that include, say, Thanksgiving is on a Thursday? Would that be included in this column?
No, because that's not a weekend. We would include it.
In this column, too, total day. But it might also include some Monday through Fridays that were holidays.
Right. And then the other would be if he was gone on the weekends and Mr. Gibson was acting there during that weekend.
Okay, fine. Thanks very much.
Well, it's just interesting that they go to all that trouble to make that obvious point. Eulogy. Nixon is there, and he addressed remarks to Nixon.
Well, Nixon's hair is a little askew there. As managing editor, it is my responsibility. The news is covered. That includes the main news. That includes foreign, national, local, Southern California, financial, sports, the suburban areas, that entire area.
And there's some good stuff here on...
We have 5 national bureaus, a huge Washington bureau and a Sacramento bureau. So you just have 2 stories?
Yeah, plenty of choices between 2 stories.
Okay. And we also subscribe to the major news services.
There's 16 and 17.
And I have various assistants. I delegate much of the responsibility to them. However, it's my responsibility to make certain that we get material that goes beyond what you can get in the radio broadcast or in the TV broadcast. Mr. Murphy, what is going on in your area?
Well, His Honor, the Mayor had a press conference today, and as usual, he discussed very freely foreign affairs, national affairs.
But he was quite reluctant to talk about his attendance record on the job. But Ken Rich and Baker dug up the records, and it shows that he's been absent something like 372 days, and 320 are working days.
It's quite probable that you may want to use Yorty as your lead story on there. You want to be very careful with your figures there.
Yeah.
As we go along, the executive news editor sketches in the stories on a dummy. It's sort of a blueprint of the newspaper page.
If you want Prothrow on there, we could easily get a P1182C without the box cutoffs right in there.
Why not?
Under... okay, that would be how many lines? Oh, how about...
You fire one guy and hire another
inches
guy.
of 14.9.
Prothrow fired, new man hired. See sports section.
I'm debating now how to organize the lead of this story. Since the mayor has now released the figures that he had earlier today said that he couldn't find, the story has changed quite a bit, and I'm leading the release of the figures by the mayor, and then I'm only going to go into the sequence of events showing how he first said he couldn't find them, then we found them elsewhere, and then he released them later on in the story and explained the context.
Yeah, just wait a few minutes.
Okay. Ken hands me the story, and I look it over. I'm looking primarily at content to make sure that he has the most important facts in the story, that he doesn't have any omissions that would lead the reader to wonder, what is this all about? After I've read over the entire story and checked all the details, if I find something wrong, I ask Ken, what about this? And he tells me perhaps if he left out a fact or two, I can write it in with my pencil, or he can take it back and type it. I read it over, and then I turn it over to the news editor, whose job it is to take it from there, have the headline written, and have the typeset and so forth. By about 6 o'clock, my story on the mayor's attendance record has been sent across the building to the input keyboard room, where it's given a priority tag and passed to a typist. These machines have a typeface that can be read by computer. The auto reader transfers the copy to punched tape. The tape then goes out to the composing room. Here the story will be set in lead type. Linotype machines used to be operated manually. Now one man serves 6 machines. At the Times, even this system is soon to be replaced by another called video composition that will eliminate those machines altogether. After being typeset, the story is proofed on this small printing press and sent up to the proofroom.
The copy comes up to us from the assembly bank, and then when we get it, I've sorted out according to its priority, and then put it up there, and the fellas come and pick it up. Well, to be a good proofreader, of course, you'd have to have a good basic background in English, grammar, punctuation, and not only be able to read to get the typographical errors, but also to read for sense, so that if there is something wrong with the story, he will know that it needs correcting. In other words, we help the editorial department out that way. And when it's read, then we send it back down to be corrected and put into the form.
Page 1, or Big 1, as it's called among the editors, is held open until the last minute. So too are some of the sports pages. My story is to appear on 1 of 2, in other words, page 1 of part 2. The page is locked up at about 7:30 and is then pressed into a map. The mat is sent down to the stereo room where it is used to mold a metal plate. But while part 2 is being printed, other news stories are still coming in.
We're covering the basketball game, and of course looking for the best action picture we can get, but we always keep in mind what that reporter up there is writing. We're illustrating his story. Now, one of the big problems is on a basketball game such as this, we start at 8 o'clock at night, our deadline being 9:20, and it's a good 15 miles from here. Of course, I have to get everything I can in about 10 minutes, give it to the messenger, and it goes.
It's a combination of two worlds, really. The critic, at least this critic, starts his day like most other people do with a 9-to-5 job in the office. This is where I worry about editing, about feature articles, about concocting interview stories, about announcements and scheduling. All these things are my problem by day. And then when everyone else goes home, lucky me goes to a concert 3 or 4 times a week. A critic is a man of many hats: a performer, an entertainer, a teacher, a reporter, a guardian of standards. He can't be too self-conscious about all those things, but he does have to fill all those functions if he's going to be even remotely effective.
I'm writing what is called running matter that I have to write during the game so that they can have that copy back at the Times and be setting it in type. If I started to type when the game ended, I wouldn't have time to get it in the paper. The machine we started to use a couple of years ago, and what it does is photograph your copy. Impulses are sent through the telephone lines back to the LA Times, where a similar machine is there, and the copy comes out of the machine back at the Times. Well, after the game, it's another ball game for me. Now, I want to get some answers. I go down and interview the coaches and the athletes to get answers to specific plays or opinions or just general feelings. But naturally it'd be sore right after they put the pins in.
Sore. That's the only thing. It's really sore.
Well, then we won't keep you out in the playoffs then, huh? No. Nice game, Will. Really good hustle.
The Times circulation of more than 1 million. By midnight, the earlier morning editions are on their way to readers all over Southern California. We print 4 editions each day, so even now there are stories being written that will appear in later revisions of this paper.
And then when everyone goes home from the concert, I come back to the office and write the review. So it's a long day, but it's also a very stimulating day.